What would you do if your own mother was kicked out of a hotel and you were the one who owned it? Late in the afternoon, at the Astoria Crown Hotel, the last rays of sunlight streamed through the glass facade, casting golden reflections across the marble walls and giving the lobby a regal glow. Evelyn Moore, her silver hair neatly pinned back and a worn leather bag in hand, entered with her daughter. She carried herself with the understated grace of a former elementary school teacher who had spent a lifetime shaping young minds. Ariana Moore, now 45, embodied a new generation of female leadership, dressed in a tailored black blazer and pearl-white blouse, her gaze sharp yet composed. They didn't need direction, nor did they hesitate. They walked in as if the place belonged to them, and in truth, it did. "Good afternoon," Ariana said, her voice calm and clear. "I have a reservation for the presidential suite, under the name Ariana Moore." The receptionist, her lips a deep crimson and fingernails sharpened like claws, glanced at the screen without a word, then abruptly disappeared into the back office. There was no offer to sit, no courtesy smile. Evelyn waited in silence, her eyes scanning the interior, the very floors she once scrubbed in her youth to support her family. Ariana noticed the coldness, but maintained her composure. 3 minutes later, a woman appeared in a charcoal suit, her stilettos tapping sharply, her expression steely. "The presidential suite?" She raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, but we don't offer that type of room to people like you." The words weren't loud, but they cut deep enough for nearby guests at the bar to turn their heads. Evelyn froze. Ariana didn't blink. "I don't care what you think you paid for," the manager added, "but this is a luxury establishment, not a place for just anyone to walk into." It wasn't a technical error. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate incision, sharp as a blade. Evelyn squeezed her daughter's hand, not out of fear, but to steady the familiar tremor of someone who had lived too long in silence. Ariana said nothing, but in her eyes something stirred, not anger, but resolve. As the revolving glass door slowly closed behind the mother and daughter, Ariana did not walk away. She stood still on the stone landing, her hand gently holding her mother's as if trying to preserve something fragile. Evelyn sighed, not out of hurt, but from the weariness of a lifetime enduring silent blows wrapped in polite appearances. But today was different. She was not alone. Ariana glanced at her watch, a small gesture filled with intent. Then she opened her bag, pulled out her phone, and made 3 calls, brief, precise, with no need for explanations. 1 to legal, one to the head of corporate security. She did not rush. Every word was deliberate, like laying stones for a bridge that would lead straight to the truth. Inside the hotel, no one realized that a storm was beginning to form. But outside, beneath the grand canopy, Evelyn spoke softly. "Don't let them pull you down to the level of their mediocrity." Ariana smiled, not a joyful smile, but the calm resolve of someone who knows exactly where she is headed. She looked up at the metal letters fixed to the building. Astoria Crown Manhattan, a symbol she had helped build, not just with investment capital, but with the belief that luxury should never be synonymous with exclusion. In that moment, a young couple walked by. The woman whispered to her husband, "That's her, on the cover of Fortune last month. Ariana Moore." Her husband frowned. That's her. Just got kicked out of her own hotel. Ariana heard them, but she didn't turn around. Because what she sought wasn't instant justice. It was a reminder for everyone watching. Never mistake silence for weakness. Less than an hour later, a black Mercedes S-Class reappeared in front of the Astoria Crown Hotel. The rear door opened with purpose. Ariana stepped out, still wearing the same outfit, but this time accompanied by 3 people. Melissa Trin, the Director of Internal Operations, holding a silver tablet in hand. Andrew Wallace, Chief Legal Counsel, in a charcoal grey suit with sleek glasses, and Special Assistant Janelle Cruz, who walked half a step behind Ariana, like a cautious shadow. The lobby seemed to freeze instantly. The sound of typing halted. The front desk receptionist swallowed hard, her eyes wide in disbelief at the woman approaching, the very same one she had previously ignored without a word. Ariana said nothing at first. She walked forward, her steps striking the marble floor with a resonance that felt like a warning bell. When she reached the exact spot at the reception desk where her mother had been denied, she stopped. "Ms. Harris," Ariana said, her voice not loud but as sharp as a finely honed blade. "As of this moment, you are no longer an employee of the Crown International Network." Melissa slid an envelope containing the termination papers across the counter without a single extra word. Nicole Harris, the receptionist, turned pale, trying to speak. But no sound came from her lips. Then from the hallway beside them, Emily Stanton, the lobby manager, appeared holding a cup of espresso, seemingly unaware of the tidal wave about to crash down. The moment their eyes met, Emily froze. Ariana did not wait. "Ms. Stanton," she continued, "your conduct today was not just a gross violation of guest protocol. It was a direct insult to my family and to the core values upon which this entire system was built." A long silence stretched across the lobby. No background music, no clinking of glasses. Only the undeniable presence of a woman who did not need to raise her voice because everyone was already listening. Ariana did not take her eyes off Emily, but her voice now slowed, as if each word were being laid down by hand rather than spoken aloud. "I did not come here to reclaim a room. I came to reclaim the respect that was blatantly denied, not just for myself, but for my mother, a woman who spent her life working, raising 3 children, and saving every penny, just to one day walk into places like this without being looked at with judgment." Emily remained silent. The people in the lobby began to stir, not with noise, but with the kind of quiet that makes one feel guilty for not having spoken up sooner. Ariana turned toward Melissa, who was holding a stack of documents. With a single look, she signaled. Melissa stepped forward immediately. "We are launching an urgent investigation into discriminatory practices at this branch, including the use of an internal guest screening list that categorized clients based on unofficial criteria, including race and appearance." A wave of whispers spread through the lobby. Nicole Harris turned pale. Emily tried to maintain her composure, but the slight tremble in her fingers betrayed her. "Today, I do not stand here as a CEO," Ariana continued. "I stand here as a reminder that power is not about how loud you can speak. It is about being able to remain silent and still have the entire room listen." At that moment, from the entrance, Evelyn Moore walked in. No one called her. No one announced her. But the moment she appeared, the room seemed to quiet one note deeper. Ariana turned slightly to look at her mother, and for the first time that afternoon, her eyes softened. Not because the end had come, but because the most important part was just about to begin. Evelyn walked slowly across the cold marble floor, yet there was no hesitation in her steps. Her posture was upright. Her arms relaxed at her sides, and her simple black shoes tapped a gentle rhythm on the ground, as if each step were recording a piece of history. Ariana took one step forward, then half a step back, yielding the center not out of deference to hierarchy, but out of deep respect. "This is my mother," she began, her voice calm and clear. "Mrs. Evelyn Moore. She spent 32 years teaching in underfunded public schools, showing children how to read one word at a time while stretching every paycheck to raise us into who we are today. And today, she was turned away from this place simply because she didn't look like someone who stays in the presidential suite." A tense silence spread throughout the lobby. No one spoke. There was no need. Evelyn's gaze alone, calm, gracious, yet unwavering, made everyone in the room feel suddenly small. An older guest near the lounge set down his cocktail glass and gave a subtle nod. A young server standing behind a marble column clenched her tray tightly, lips pressed shut. Ariana continued, her tone never rising, yet each word striking directly at the conscience. "You didn't see her. You saw the color of her skin, her silver hair, her worn leather bag. You thought you were upholding standards, but in truth you were upholding prejudice." Evelyn remained silent, but she reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph, handing it to Ariana. In the picture was a young woman scrubbing the very floors of this hotel, Evelyn herself, decades ago, working as a janitor. She had once bowed her head in this place, but today she had returned not to recount the past, but to prove that those who were once dismissed are the very ones shaping what tomorrow will become. Without anyone signaling it, phones began quietly emerging across the room. A young woman in a light blue blouse, a guest from one of the upper floors, was live streaming the scene before her, whispering with a trembling voice, "I wasn't planning to record, but people need to see this. This isn't something small." The hashtags #EvelynMoore and #AstoriaTruth spread like wildfire across a dry field. In just 10 minutes, thousands had shared the video with a single caption. "They just kicked the CEO out of the hotel she owns." But Ariana wasn't concerned with social media. She didn't need an audience. What she wanted was to confront a system that had been silent for far too long. "I didn't come here for attention," she said, eyes fixed on Emily. "I came to remind everyone that when apathy becomes institutionalized, making it public is the only way to stop it." A man near the bar muttered, "Wasn't she honored at the World Hospitality Leadership Forum last year?" His wife nodded, "Yes. She was the first to establish the global code of dignified service standards." The whispers grew louder. Recognition, confusion, regret. And then a sudden sound interrupted the murmur, the chime of an emergency alert over the internal PA system. Melissa calmly raised her tablet, skimming through a message from the executive board. "Handle immediately. The incident is now on the news." Ariana turned to Nicole, the front desk attendant, and asked quietly, "Do you remember what my mother said to you?" Nicole stammered, I was just following protocol." Ariana tilted her head slightly, voice steady. "What protocol gives you the right to make someone feel unworthy? And if there were no cameras, would you still think you did nothing wrong?" No one answered, because everyone already knew. The answer was written plainly in Evelyn's gaze, not in anger, but in that deeply familiar disappointment that quietly asked, "Again?" Ariana did not need a meeting, nor did she require any further internal reports. She simply tilted her head toward Melissa, who immediately handed her 2 neatly clipped folders enclosed in brown envelopes. "I'm not waiting for an apology," Ariana said calmly, locking eyes with Emily Stanton. "And I don't need an explanation either. This is not a personal matter. It's a cultural failure." She placed the first envelope on the front desk and slid it toward Nicole. "This is your termination notice, effective immediately. Reason: gross violation of guest reception standards, making discriminatory assumptions based on appearance and guest profile." Nicole froze, lips pressed tight. She had never imagined that the woman standing before her was the very person signing her monthly paychecks. Ariana then shifted her gaze toward Emily and gently laid the second folder on the polished wooden counter. "And this is the notice of your removal and immediate suspension from all managerial duties, Emily Stanton. The HR department will issue the official confirmation within 2 hours." Emily began to speak, but Ariana quietly raised a hand to signal silence. "No more words. You've had your chances to do the right thing, more than once. But you chose silence when you should have acted, and you acted when you should have listened." A ripple of shock spread across the grand lobby. A former server stepped out from behind the kitchen, eyes filled with emotion. It seemed that for many in this place, what happened today was not an isolated incident. It had lived in silence for a long time, waiting for a day like this to surface. Ariana said no more. She turned to Melissa and Andrew, voice steady and firm. "I want every staff member on duty today included in a complete review of service conduct. Those who understand will stay. Those who cannot change will have to go." Justice does not come from leniency. It comes from timely, unwavering action. As the tension still lingered in the lobby after the firm decisions were handed down, an unexpected voice rose from the back. I need to say something." Every eye turned toward the man, stepping out from the staff hallway. It was Elijah Torres, the systems technician who rarely appeared outside the server room. Elijah removed the badge from his chest, his hands trembling slightly. "I've worked here for 7 years, and during all that time, there's been an unofficial internal system managed by front desk staff and mid-level management. They called it anonymous guest scoring." A wave of shock swept through the room. Elijah continued, his voice growing stronger. "Every time a guest arrived, staff were allowed to assign an internal priority level based on appearance, name, accent. Those marked with low scores would be given substandard rooms, delayed check-in, or quietly denied service. They said it was to protect the brand image. But everyone knew what it really was. Evelyn stood behind Ariana, her eyes closed gently. It was not surprise, but confirmation. The things she had suspected for so long were finally spoken aloud by someone on the inside. Ariana looked at Elijah, nodded, then turned back to the entire lobby. So we are not just confronting individual misconduct, but a quiet system of discrimination, legitimized under the word procedure. But the truth is, no procedure ever grants permission to treat my mother as if she didn't exist. A quiet sigh escaped from someone seated nearby. A middle-aged woman whispered, "That happened to me once, but I didn't speak up." Ariana did not blame her. She simply said, "Silence is not your fault, but now is the time to end it." For the first time since the ordeal began, those present no longer looked at Ariana as a CEO, but as someone giving voice to what they had always felt, those who had been excluded and never found the words to name that pain. The atmosphere in the grand lobby no longer felt like a hotel foyer. It had become a silent courtroom where everyone was a witness. Ariana stood at the center of it all, with no podium, no microphone, yet every word she spoke rang out like a clear verdict. I did not build the Crown International system, only to one day watch my mother be turned away from a place she helped shape. I built it so people like her, those who have been overlooked their entire lives, can walk in with their dignity intact without needing to prove anything further. A few people looked down in shame. Staff members who had once smirked when Evelyn entered now seemed stripped of their masks. But Ariana didn't stop at exposing the wrong. She began the transformation. Starting today, I am launching a new initiative called Project Reverence, a complete top-to-bottom reform. Every employee, from front desk staff to regional directors, will undergo retraining in equality, unconscious bias, and service standards that do not discriminate by race, appearance, or background. Melissa nodded in confirmation. Andrew, the legal advisor, handed Ariana the official documents freshly signed from headquarters, effective immediately. And it won't stop there, Ariana continued. We are establishing the Evelyn Moore Scholarship Fund for young women of color pursuing hospitality management. Because if the next generation is not input into the room, we will rebuild the entire building so they are the ones designing it. A wave of applause erupted, spontaneous and unprompted. Guests who had initially come just to check in now found themselves witnessing something greater, real change. Evelyn stood quietly behind, her eyes no longer teary, but gleaming like tempered glass. Ariana turned back, gently took her mother's hand. We're not reclaiming justice, we're redefining it. And in that moment, Evelyn was no longer just a mother being defended. She became a symbol of a generation of women once pushed aside, now stepping into the center with nothing but the strength of their presence. As the lights in the grand lobby gradually dimmed, giving way to the soft glow of the late afternoon sun pouring through the glass walls, Ariana and Evelyn walked slowly across the marble floor. The same floor where just hours earlier they had been made to feel unworthy of existing. Now, no one could look at them without lowering their gaze. A young Latino bellhop, standing quietly behind a large column, stepped forward and gently opened the door. He said nothing. But his eyes, those eyes were filled with respect and gratitude. Ariana gave a slight nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. I see you. And you can choose to do what is right. Outside, the New York traffic hummed steadily, but in the hearts of those two women, time stood still. Beneath the grand archway, engraved with the words, Astoria Crown Manhattan, they paused, looking up at a symbol once revered, now forced to be re-examined by the very people who had helped build it. Evelyn spoke first, her voice raspy but firm. "You did the right thing." Ariana smiled, resting her hand on her mother's arm. "You should never have been treated that way, at any point in your life." Evelyn nodded, her gaze distant. "But if the world hasn't learned that lesson yet, maybe it's time we teach it in a way they won't forget." They stepped into the car, the door closed softly, like the final period to an old chapter. But Ariana did not settle in. She tapped her phone screen, which showed a live evening broadcast. The video from the hotel had already surpassed 5 million views in just a few hours. Hashtags like #dignity is non-negotiable and #Evelyn was enough were spreading rapidly across social media. Yet Ariana did not smile. She was not chasing a trend. She was chasing real change. "Starting tomorrow," she said into her earpiece, "cancel all current PR plans. We don't need to control the story. We need to create the next one." Evelyn looked at her daughter as if seeing her for the first time, not just as a successful woman, but as an inheritor. Not of wealth, but of spirit. And in the misty New York night, 2 generations sat side by side, no longer excluded, but rewriting the standards of presence, permanently. In the world of premium hospitality, where every greeting and every glance shapes the guest experience, the true issue does not lie in how lavishly you design a lobby or how fine the wine you serve may be. The real question is this: who is welcomed in, and who is made to feel out of place simply because they do not fit a familiar mold? The story of Ariana Moore is not just an isolated incident at the Astoria Crown Hotel. It is a mirror reflecting a quiet but deeply unsettling truth, that there are people who, despite being talented, graceful, and dignified, are still judged by nothing more than the first look they receive. But what makes this story memorable is not the injustice itself, but how it was met. Not with outrage, retaliation, or spectacle, but with calm, precise, and unyielding action. By terminating those who acted wrongly, restructuring the system from within, and launching a long-term initiative in her mother's name, Ariana did more than restore justice. She redefined what filial devotion looks like in the modern age, not silent deference, but the courage to rise up and reshape an entire structure so that her mother and those like her would never again be excluded. If this story touched something within you, a memory, a feeling of being overlooked, or a moment when you witnessed injustice and did not know how to speak up, then like this video as a quiet nod of understanding. Subscribe to stay with us as we continue telling stories of courage and transformation led by those who often go unseen but never give up. And if you have ever believed that respect should never depend on appearance, comment below with the words, "more than worthy," because sometimes 3 simple words are enough to begin a much-needed conversation. And remember, you do not have to be a CEO to make the world reconsider how it sees others. Sometimes, all it takes is standing up at the right moment and refusing to step back. We'll see you in the next story.